Good evening and welcome to our broadcast. I'm Al Spector, your host for the second edition of MarinArts Presents. This time, we're broadcasting live again, and it's from a very exciting venue. It's the soon-to-be completed new home of the Marin Shakespeare Company in San Rafael, California. It's a discussion about the importance and power of community theater. It's about arts education, and it's about a unique program inside and outside of several prisons here in the Bay Area. We'll talk quite a bit about social justice. We're hoping that we might understand a bit more about how an investment in bricks and mortar in a facility like this can create not just a community asset, but perhaps a hub and a place for social change. So let's get started. For some historical context about this particular Shakespeare Company, before we get to our first guest, let's take a look at a short film, much of which we shot recently here in San Rafael. Take a look at this film.
My name is Bob Currier. I was called here to come here in 1989 to revive a Shakespeare company that had this stage built, of which I am downstage center. This is called the Forest Meadows Amphitheater. It was purpose-built for the Marin Shakespeare Festival in 1967 here on the campus of what was then Dominican College, now Dominican University. That festival died shortly thereafter, and this space, the 600-seat amphitheater, was used for graduations when Dominican College was smaller. We have been doing shows here since 1990. Our mission was to introduce, celebrate Shakespeare in Marin and the Bay Area and beyond. So our growth has been steady over the last 33 years.
Okay, so Bob, you've told us a bit about the history, going way back, the chain of events. What motivated you actually to start the theater company?
So when I had a chance to come here and head a company that was primarily Shakespeare, I was keenly interested. I'm one of those Shakespeare nuts. I feel Shakespeare's like Mozart. We're never going to get tired of hearing him, no matter how long ago he lived. And so it was a chance to do a company that was primarily Shakespeare-based, and I jumped at the opportunity.
Perfect. Hey, following up on that, your theater company, it's clearly a vehicle for social progress. Tell us about when that actually came into being.
We started working at San Quentin Prison and doing a lot of prison works. Being right here, 5 miles away from San Quentin, one of the primary name recognition prisons in the United States, there was a lot of people that said, you should do Shakespeare. You should do Shakespeare in the prisons. Fortunately, San Quentin is very welcoming. They have dozens of programs there that are run by community volunteers. So they were receptive to us doing Shakespeare with the prisoners. Around the world now, there's hundreds of Shakespeare companies, but we're pretty much known as the largest Shakespeare in prisons company in the world. That's our identity.
Andy Gordon. I'm an attorney, a firm of Dwayne Morris. I do litigation matters. And I've been involved with Marin Shakespeare Company for about 5 years now. And I got involved because of the connection with social justice. Heard Damian Brown speak at a function and was just overwhelmed with the dedication of Damian, Leslie and Bob Currier, and a lot of people affiliated with Marin Shakespeare Company.
Can you share with us a little bit about how the Marin Shakespeare Company's board feels about building this project?
There's a lot of excitement because Marin Shakespeare for 32 years has been an organization that has done plays, typically 2 or 3 plays each summer, late in the summer, outside at beautiful Dominican University, Forest Meadows, outdoor amphitheater. But it's only for a few months a year. And this gives us the opportunity to have performing arts and education year-round. This will be a house that we can be very proud of. I think it will be an asset to the community because we're going to be here in San Rafael serving not only Marin County, but the Bay Area. And this allows us workshops, experimental theater, to have performances in the arts other than theater. And there might be comedy, there might be music. It also allows us to have educational opportunities because one of our missions not only is social justice, but it's also education. So we are in a number of schools in the Bay Area, and this will allow us to have opportunity for kids to come here and experience theater in a theater.
Barry Rosenberger. My day job, I still do work, and I'm a research fellow, and I'm a geek. And so I work for FICO or Fair Isaac, and so if you don't like your FICO score, you can throw rotten fruit at me. And that's my day job, and I work with early stage companies, and I'm an investor in that, and I work with nonprofits such as this one. And when I invest in for-profit companies, the principles are exactly the same. You look for where are the returns. If you're for-profit, you're looking for financial returns. I'm looking for social returns. My wife and I decided a number of years ago we have the opportunity to invest as we're talking here, and she and I finally articulated that we have, for our philanthropy, we have two pillars. One side was access to high quality education, and this organization delivers that. And the other is access to high quality information. And so those are the pillars, and the umbrella is for people who are unprivileged. My family and I have been very privileged. And so that's where our passion is. And this one is right in the bullseye of that mission.
Okay, on to our first guest. With no further ado, we welcome to this stage the managing director of the Marin Shakespeare Company, Leslie Currier. Hey, Leslie, thanks so much for being on our broadcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Al. It's a total joy to be here tonight in this beautiful new venue with you.
Well, yeah, and thanks for having us in your new house. Appreciate it. Hey, to get us started, just tell us a bit about the programming that the company's been offering and what's going to be offered here at this new facility.
Marin Shakespeare Company offers programs on stage, outdoors at the Forest Meadows Amphitheater, and we are home to the Returned Citizens Theater Troupe, actors who have survived incarceration who tell stories of importance through theater. We'll soon have year-round performances here in this space. We also have an array of education programs in schools, outside of schools, going and touring to schools, student matinees that serve thousands of youth every year. And our prison program, which you've heard about, which has served up to 14 prisons around the state and which has inspired many participants to rediscover their creativity and their passion for self-expression. With this new venue, we will be able to do more programming, year-round programming, more educational programming. We'll be able to serve as a community gathering place, a place where people can come to explore and create and learn. It's very exciting.
Great. Fabulous, fabulous. We know that Marin Shakespeare often refers to its Theater in Prisons program as the social justice program, but social justice concepts, they seem to permeate everything the company does and the organization has to offer. So let's start out with a discussion, if you don't mind, as the co-founder of the organization. Well, what does social justice mean to you?
Well, there's so much injustice in our world. We're all human beings. We're flawed. Our systems are deeply flawed. And theater tells stories. So it's our responsibility to choose those stories carefully. Whose stories are told, how those stories are told. They can really allow audience members and actors to learn more about other people, to imagine what it's like to be somebody else. So in my lifetime, I've seen in the theater stories being told about interracial marriage, gay love, people who have survived incarceration and what they have to give to society. And when we tell those stories in a dark little room with 165 people, as this theater holds, we start to learn about each other and we start to build compassion and understanding. And that brings about social change, positive social change.
Great. Well, it's clear that you feel that theater can make a difference. Okay, let's talk about Shakespeare. All right. So, what is it about Shakespeare that makes it a good platform for building understanding, for generating compassion, and for bridging some of the divides between us? What about Shakespeare?
Well, Shakespeare is a dead white male author, and he wrote in a very specific time and place. And yet, I believe that Shakespeare was able to write more specifically and in more detail about human motivations, human thinking, human passions, human interactions than most other writers. And Shakespeare was a poet. So what we get with those words on a page are something that we're forced to interpret because it's poetry, and we're forced to make it our own. Shakespeare writes about parents and children's relationships, loyalty and disloyalty, falling in love, forgiveness and mercy. And I've had the privilege of doing Shakespeare with young people, with teenagers, with professional actors, with a variety of folks who are incarcerated in the state of California. And I found that there's something in Shakespeare that resonates with just about everyone. People find relevance in uncovering and discovering the ideas and the thoughts in Shakespeare, and joy in bringing them to life through their own personal experience.
Hey, fabulous. Thanks for sharing that with us. And hey, thanks again for having us in your house and being on this broadcast. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. Next, before we chat with this evening's second guest, we've got another short film. This one focuses on Marin Shakespeare Company's impressive education programming. Take a look. We think you'll find this quite interesting.
I'm Alana Kepner. I'm the education director at Marin Shakespeare Company, and my job is to oversee the educational programming that we put on. So that includes camps, classes. We have a teen tour that goes through Marin in the Bay Area, and also things like student matinees and preparing materials for audiences to really appreciate our plays.
What's your goal with these students? Tell us about that.
I think at the basic level, we want students to get engaged, and then of course we want them to develop an appreciation for Shakespeare, but also not just Shakespeare as a means to an end, but also Shakespeare in relationship to how they can appreciate other forms of theater and other forms of literature and the world around them. Now that we're moving into our awesome new space, we're hoping to offer some younger classes as well, and we have in the past. So we're hoping to be able to offer some 5 to 7 class and maybe even some younger classes, and really get involved in more creative drama-oriented activities.
Fantastic. We'll get to the new space in a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Don't you worry.
Okay.
Yeah, don't you worry. Let me ask you about Shakespeare. And how does Shakespeare serve to help you pursue these goals that you've got? What about Shakespeare actually helps these students?
I think that's a great question, especially when we think about, and we talk about this a lot in terms of our philosophy about where Shakespeare's role these days when we're trying to make sure that theater and our world is more inclusive. And so we're trying not to put Shakespeare on a pedestal and say everybody must achieve this certain standard in order to perform Shakespeare, and you're not good enough the way you are. We really want students to understand that everything that they are is enough for Shakespeare, and we really want them to connect to Shakespeare on their own level versus feeling like they have to put on a voice or an accent or be something bigger or smaller than what they are, or try to contain their personality in a tiny piece of text. But also not just Shakespeare as a means to an end, but also Shakespeare in relationship to how they can appreciate other forms of theater and other forms of literature and the world around them. And not all of our programs are oriented just in Shakespeare. When we work in the schools, we work with all kinds of poetic texts. lot of times I find younger students, no one's told them anything about Shakespeare, so they come in with just an open mind and ready to use their imaginations the way they would in an imagination game or an imaginary play that they do by themselves. And that's really inspiring for me.
All right. So let's talk about the new theater.
Yeah.
And so I bet you're excited about it.
So excited.
And what is it going to mean to your education programming? What impact is it going to have?
I've been very excited about our new space. So this space will allow us to put on a full range of classes, again, adding different age groups to that mix and expanding our offerings. So it's not just going to be about Shakespeare, but we want the education arm of the company to meet up with the social justice arm of the company so that we can do things like storytelling and connecting to your identity through theater. And that's really, it's going to be a valuable way to like golden thread that whole idea and philosophy of the company.
I'm Lucy and I'm 12.
I'm Lisa and I'm 10.
Hey, how long have you guys been at?
I think 3 years.
Yeah.
For you, both of you?
I think.
Both start right at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was that really fun? And you've
Yeah.
been together the whole time.
Yeah.
And you're not in the same grade.
No.
No. But are you in acting classes together?
Yeah.
Together?
The ones that are the same.
Sometimes I do ones alone, but
Yeah.
Sometimes you're
Because sometimes,
yeah.
sometimes she does more than me.
independent stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is it fun being together though?
Yeah. Well,
Sometimes.
sometimes.
What productions have you been in? You've been
Like
at the
Tempest.
company?
The
Yeah,
Tempest.
So, The Tempest. Lisa's been in like more than me. I was
in
we both in
Julius
the Tempest. She was in Julius Caesar.
And they're both in 12th Night
Midsummer Night's Dream.
and Romeo and Juliet.
Wow.
And didn't you do one more? But I forget. I think that's it.
Is it hard? Is it hard to do?
Well, unless you have like a monologue or big lines or something like
Yeah,
that.
depends on how many lines you have.
I guess.
So the more lines you got, the harder it is.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Kind of way.
Oh, and do you guys like memorizing your lines?
Sometimes.
I don't know. No.
It's kind of fun to practice with people.
Yeah, it was like
And do you practice with each other?
Never.
Never.
Really?
Never. But you're on stage together. So
Yeah.
yeah.
what do you think's cool about it?
I like the location.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
And backstage.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
when you can go
Do
backstage.
you like being backstage? You guys sometimes peek out at the audience
Yeah.
there? Yeah. Be careful they don't see you peek.
Yeah.
Right. Tell me a little bit about getting ready for for a production. What's that like? Is it busy?
Kind of. You memorize your lines, get a costume that you think would be good, or they give you a costume. You act it out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
Do different scenes.
practice the scenes with your friends, or just practice the scenes. And if you have any fight scenes, you're gonna want to practice those a lot.
Oh,
The
those.
fight scenes.
Yeah, I like
Yeah,
fight
are they
scenes.
fun?
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's fun to get your costume for.
So you like the costume?
Yeah, because we get to like tell them what we think would be good for our character, like what costume we want, and they'll get something that's it
Yeah.
or close to it.
It's kind of fun because you meet a lot of new people.
We
Yeah, we made a
Make
lot of friends.
next guest plays a significant role in defining that it stands for, and to make it happen. We now welcome to this stage, to get this right, the company's program manager for Shakespeare for Social Justice, Alejandro Wall. Alejandro, thanks a million for being here.
It is such a pleasure to be here with you.
Great. Hey, tell us about your role. Hey, you've got social justice right in your title.
Yeah,
Tell us about
great.
that.
Super exciting. Well, I serve as the administrative liaison between Marin Shakespeare Company and our teaching artists and the California Arts Council and the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, supervising programs in 6 California state prisons, serving well over hundreds of men, women, and youth who are incarcerated.
Okay, fabulous. Hey, we get a chance to ask everybody connected to this company about their view of social justice. Tell us, how do you think about social justice in the carceral setting?
Yeah, it's it's such a wonderful question because social justice in the carceral setting is so specific. What we do is we laser focus in on the restoration of humanity and connection. Incarceration is a setting where you're disconnected from yourself, from your community, from others whom you're incarcerated alongside with, and your voice and your agency is taken from you. And with the intersection of what we do, the arts and just social justice precepts in general, what we really focus in on is not so much the sequestration that incarceration can often feel like or frequently is, but the restoration of the individual into the community of the art making that we do in our programs, but also rehearsing the ability to go back home and be restored as an individual. Yeah,
fabulous. Along those lines, tell us, how do theater arts help us to take care of each other and to care for one another?
absolutely. Yeah. Well, we so often say that theater is a rehearsal for life. And what we're doing in rehearsal spaces is we're rehearsing teamwork and problem resolution and big risk taking in a very safe, connected way. And we're also practicing using our voice and speaking up and being heard and being seen. And it helps us really develop a healthy understanding and appreciation of what it takes to exist in the world with your own lived experience and to appreciate others' lived experience as well. You know oneself to understand others.
Great. I've had the pleasure of speaking with you before, and you speak about cultural humility.
Yeah.
And how does theater help us cultivate this practice of learning about others and compassion for others?
Absolutely. Well, theater provides such an important window into lived experiences that we might not have the opportunity to experience. And it helps us develop what I like to call cultural competency. So we learn sort of like the baseline understanding of other people's cultures and other people's trauma, joy, celebrations, all these little cultural touchstones. Cultural humility means coming in and having an understanding that one's own culture is not the primary culture. It's not the best culture. It's simply one in this beautiful tapestry of lived human experience. And the reason why it connects so closely to social justice is that when we go in and we teach Shakespeare in prisons, we want to make sure that we're teaching in a culturally competent way, understanding what everyone in the ensemble is bringing to the table, and not saying, as Alana was saying in the video earlier, that Shakespeare is the end-all be-all. But this is yours. This is your tool. Use this to amplify and resonate yourself and have the world see you and your culture and your community for all the richness and diversity that exemplifies.
Okay, great. We get to talk about Shakespeare. Focus in on it. With a little bit of time that we've got left, tell us what is it about Shakespeare that makes it a particularly good tool for building cross-cultural connections?
Absolutely. Well, as Leslie was touching on earlier, Shakespeare has that really unique ability to distill humanity into this beautiful poetic experience. And I think there's sort of a tendency to say that Shakespeare is universal. Shakespeare can be universal. We have to work to find our place in it because there are some barriers to access the language, the culture, as we were referring to. But what's so wonderful about Shakespeare is that it is so far removed from our modern circumstances, and it provides these big epic circumstances. Heroes go on these wonderful transformative journeys, be it tragic or comic or somewhere in between. And by performing these characters and feeling the transformation along with them, we're able to access some sort of self-revelation and insight in a very safe and careful way. If someone is, for example, has experienced a lot of trauma in foster care, doing a play that is specifically about foster care might not be the most safe and nurturing environment for them. But going in and playing Perdita in Winter's Tale, she's the character who is searching for family. And so that's a way to explore that search and the emotions that arise up with it in a very controlled and nourishing way.
Great. And you've seen quite an impact in the carceral setting.
Absolutely.
Based on Shakespeare.
Absolutely. Every day. We actually recently had a performance of Henry IV Part 1 at Folsom Prison. And one individual spoke up and said, I've never felt so connected, and I've never felt so confident and able to stand up in front of people and speak up and be seen. And that's really what it's all about.
Great. Wonderful. Hey, thanks again for having us here, in your theater company and for being with us and speaking with us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Thanks.
having us.
Thanks, Alejandra. Okay. Before we get to our final guest for the evening, for some additional context, we put together one final short piece. It's on the company's social justice programming. Take a look at this short piece as well.
So, hi, Rudy. Here we are at Solano State Prison. You just finished a Shakespeare play, and it was Julius Caesar, and you played many roles in that play. I want to hear about your experience.
This is my second year. We did have a program here called POS, which is Performances at Solano, where a lot of guys write their own plays, and Marin Shakespeare would come in and help us put them on. That's where I began to heal for myself. This program has allowed me to connect the dots for a painful, traumatic past where the only way I viewed relationships was through drugs. And that came from shooting my dad up at 6 years old to learn how to, okay, that's how you create a relationship. So this program has allowed me to say, no, there's a more direct way to do that now. And I didn't have that tool. I was in a lot of distortion. So this program allowed me to just strip away and just be me. A lot of these guys are coming out of their shell for the first time to Santiago, Shalabra Stogie, and for them to join us speaks volumes for their courage to step out away from the dynamics on the yard and come in here and just present something and give something back to the community that we wouldn't have normally had a chance.
Well, you had played so many roles. I think the interesting part was how you took this play, you and your castmates took the play of Julius Caesar, and you made a parallel to the yard. And tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so there's a scene when they're talking about what happens on the other side of the yard. So that wasn't in there. So I actually wrote their dialogue. They wanted more meat and potatoes and more correlation to Julius Caesar, so those watching it would say, okay, how can I adapt it to today's environment, which is the prison environment? And a lot of that goes on the yard, where it's always someone that worries about what's going on in a different area, but that's just normal. On the streets, prison is society condensed. So in here, they don't think that, all they see is a lot of negative on the news, but there's a lot of positive that goes on, and that when we cross lines and are able to meet each other, see each other as humans instead of just an enemy, creative things happen. But for us who have to stay here and pretty much live out our lives, we have two choices. One, continue to maintain a negative mindset, continue to live how we want to live, or change for the sake of changing. And a lot of the guys who've been in Shakespeare have gotten out have not come back. The recidivism rate, I think, is below 1%.
I am a returned citizen, which means that I just came out of prison a little over 3 months ago. I first met Leslie and was introduced to the Marin Shakespeare Company in 2014. They brought their wonderful Shakespeare program, Shakespeare for Social Justice program, to the prison I was in. When they said we were actually putting on a play, I was terrified. And I wanted to quit because I had never done anything like that before. And I was convinced to stick around by Leslie and a couple of the other teaching artists. And I stuck it out, and things really started to click with me during the rehearsal, watching everybody, not necessarily act, which they did do, but just interact with each other, watching grown men that we wouldn't necessarily have interacted with on a regular basis find this common ground in putting together a production for Shakespeare, and also like just learning about it ourselves. And we found this common ground, and I've made a couple of lifelong friendships through the program and through just being willing to be vulnerable. It's for one of the first times in my life I felt really seen when I was part of their program, when we were putting on the plays and we're doing that self-exploration, working on ourselves while we're also working on the plays. I felt really seen and heard. It's true that I always tell people, especially when we're talking about the arts, and if they give me a compliment, I tell them I've had the best teachers in the world. And when I say that, I mean it. Haven't only taught me about Shakespeare, they've taught me about life and just connecting with other people. And it's been an amazing experience, and just one I hope to continue in the future. So like, especially theater, I wasn't exposed to it growing up. And not necessarily just fear of being on stage, although there was that. It was just the circles I was running in. It wasn't socially acceptable to be in theater, be in the arts. And this took me years to realize, but most of my decisions, all of my unhealthy decisions for sure, were formed by the idea of, is this going to get me accepted or rejected by my peer group? And theater, the arts, it just wasn't acceptable when I was growing up. And even through a lot of my adult years, it wasn't acceptable with the people I was with. And after being exposed to it, it still wasn't acceptable with a lot of people. I came to the crossroads where I had to decide, is this the life I want to live? And are these the people I really want to be around if they can't accept me for something that I've come to love doing? Theater's one of the perfect platforms for social justice. It's a place where people can be creative, they can write what's really on their mind, they can make a satire that parallels reality, that's not so hidden, parallel onto something that's actually going on in real life. And what I love about theater is it's so accessible. We started a theater company in prison, and we wrote about just things that we deal with on a daily basis. We wrote plays about prison, we wrote about loss, love. There's just so many places you can go with theater, and you can do it on a very limited budget, which I really like. You just need the space and people willing to put their time in to do it. Social justice is finding a way where we can all just coexist.
To you, in your view, what social justice really is?
So I think relevant to this organization, there's two chimes. The first one is education, and then the other one was what they do in prison. Easily 6, 8 performances that my wife and I had seen in the prison, and I like to say, if you want to know what criminal justice means, go into San Quentin. Put it on your bucket list if you're in the Bay Area, and you will see the world differently. And one of the things that I remember most specifically, it was a workshop. It wasn't a performance, and there were maybe 15 of us each, maybe men in blue, and guests. And I would guess there were maybe 4 seniors from a private high school, and they were there. And at certain points, we paired up one-on-one, and Leslie was directing. And then the question after that workshop, the question to the students, what did you think? And more than one of them, maybe more of them, in one way or another said, this changes my life. Wow. They see the world differently. So what does criminal justice mean? Go in there and talk to the men in blue.
Well, simply put, our final guest embodies all that's good about this theater company and the work it accomplishes. We now welcome to this stage Shakespearean actor and teaching artist, Damian Brown. Damian, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, let's get right to it. The idea of social justice encompasses the broad concept of how opportunities and resources are shared in a society. It's at least part of it. How does your work teaching Shakespeare to people who are incarcerated and youth that are incarcerated make a difference based on your own views of injustice?
Well, I believe that directly injustice and socialization directly influencing the access to opportunities and resources. So when I enter the space with the young men, I first want to assess what is the socialization level that you have? And I'll utilize Shakespeare in that way of, for instance, Polonius' speech to Laertes. Many things in there that I utilize to access the level of socialization. I asked him 2 questions. First, as we go through this, you're not going to understand it probably. We'll go through it again, and I'll break it down in your vernacular. Then I want you to think about 2 questions along the way. Who in your life has shared similar information with you? And who in your life have you shared similar information with? I always seek to allow them to see the future self. So if I can do that, and they can understand where they are on the social strata, then they can understand how to utilize the things that this society claims that is high, like the language of Shakespeare, to find a way to get a redistribution of that opportunity and those resources.
Fantastic. Hey, let's we get to have all the guests, talk directly about Shakespeare. And what is it about Shakespeare that, in particular, helps break through racism and oppression?
I used to wonder, how could that be? Because whenever I thought about Shakespeare, I thought about older white people. And I didn't see how that could be until I started reading the text deeply and utilizing the text as a socialization tool. When we take the language of Shakespeare and we show people who are not supposed to really understand it, that they can handle it and own it, these same people develop a belief, a certain confidence that there is something that those who are the haves, and many times those who are incarcerated are the have-nots. There is something that the haves possess that I too can achieve. So if I can achieve that language, can I achieve that portfolio? So it's very important to use that and know that Shakespeare's language is very much everybody's experience. Okay?
Yep.
And if you can harness the lessons of those things into your life, you can use that for your gain.
Okay, so wonderful. Hey, got one final question with the couple of minutes that we've got left. It's kind of a big question, but let's go for it. What's, Damien, with all the experience you've had, tell us your view of the role of artists in society today.
I've long believed that the role of artists in society are to be the timekeepers, to always herald in the time that has come and usher out the time that is done. And in doing that, it requires that one be honest. It requires that one develop, if they do not possess, a thick skin. It requires that someone be prepared to not be liked. It requires someone to have an imagination bold enough, daring enough, clear enough, and honest enough to suggest a direction and stand firm on it, no matter how the others may feel. That's the role of the artist, to be constant and true.
Great. Hey, thanks. Thank you. Thanks for being here. And we really appreciate you being part of this program.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you. Sure.
Okay. Just one more short piece. It's another film, and it's a shorty. It's a quick tour of this beautiful facility. The tour is led by the delightful chairman of the company's board of directors, Andy Gordon, and take a look at this. I think you'll find this interesting and fun, and please watch this next.
The first place I will take you to is the area that will be an art gallery. Got this wonderful space here with large walls that are blank right now. We soon hope to have them displaying works of art. We envision this as a rotating art gallery space. Now you're looking at the lobby, which is empty, but we don't think it'll always be empty because this is a place where people can gather. There might be someone playing piano or other music here, tables here. People are waiting maybe to see a performance, or they might just come here and relax, have a drink or have something to eat and chat with friends and then leave. But head over here. I won't show you the box office or the kitchen or anything else, but we'll come upstairs. As we head up the stairs, we come to offices for our staff, but also a room that can be used for our classroom, for teaching kids education, drama, whatever, on site. So it's a big empty space now, but you can imagine it's going to be filled with lots of joyous noise soon. So this is backstage, and we can look out. And people always ask, is this where Juliet will be standing? Well, maybe. It's a pretty good educated guess, but this can be used by the actors. And these are some of the places where they can come between scenes. There also are different entries and exits around the theater, so the actors can pop up at different places. One other place to talk about, which is upstairs, we have a phenomenal collection of props and costumes, which is in the upper floor here. It's now all protected with sprinklers, but for years and years, or decades and decades, the founders, Bob and Leslie Currier, had stored the costumes and the props at the garage at their house. And now we have wonderful space upstairs where all that is going to be maintained. We are delighted to have offices because for years, we've been operating literally out of a house, out of Bob and Leslie's house. So this now gives us the ability to have our own office space. And in addition, our board is looking forward to actually having a constant place to meet, because we've been meeting different places because we had a set or standard meeting locale. Yeah, it's nice to see a parking lot, this parking lot. Now we're going into the dark, but actually this will be lit sometime soon. This is where behind the stage, and if you could walk through here, this is where the actors will be able to go behind the set, behind the stage, and as they exit at one location, they can enter the stage at another location. And that goes over there. We will have you can see the booth up there for the technical booth for lighting and sound and everything else. We're getting our speakers and lights in here. So for the actors, for large cast, small cast, whatever, they're able to spend time here getting ready for their dramatic performances.
Hi, I'm Mary O'Mara. I'm the director of MarinArts. I'm here with Leslie Currier, and we're excited to be here. Thank you for coming tonight. And Leslie,
Thank you, Mary, so much to MarinArts for putting this webinar together. This has been really fabulous to have an opportunity to show off this beautiful new venue to the community. We should be able to open in a few months, and we can't wait to have you in here to create and participate and view all of the tremendous art that will happen in this space. We are a theater company, a nonprofit theater company, so we rely on the kindness of strangers. So we appreciate your support if you are able to make a donation in support of this building or of our programs. And you can go to our website at marinshakespeare.org or give me a call. Thanks so much for doing this tonight.
Oh, well, MarinArts Presents is honored to do this. And for the community at large, you want to know what's going on at the arts? Come to marinarts.org and find out. Well, Leslie?
Remember, all the world is a stage. Come play your part with us.
Thank you for coming tonight.